in the first section, we will quickly run you through who are we. It will be 5 to 10 minutes long and we'll quickly tell you who are we and what do we do. Then we will come to the main part of the webinar in which we will talk about the strategy to score 700 at length. We will deep dive into it. We will understand what it takes to actually get to a 700 score, and it will be about 60 minutes long. Okay. And finally, we will answer your questions for about 20 to 25 minutes. So the third section of the webinar is going to be an open-ended Q&A where you can post your questions and we will be happy to take them up. All right. So this is going to be the structure of the webinar. Okay. So who are we? So we are a group of mentors and tutors who have counseled and taught thousands of students over the last decade, with some of the most renowned brands in the industry who are in the education sector. Now, while we were working with these companies, we had a first-hand experience of some key pain points that students have. Okay, and I would like to know from your standpoint that what are the problems, before I say anything, what are the problems that you face while you prepare for the GMAT? So please post your responses in the chat. You can send them to the admin and share your responses here. So tell me, what are the problems that you face while you prepare? And I would request everyone to participate in the poll because that helps us in actually making it a two-way communication. Okay, so I'm waiting for your responses, guys. Okay, so here's the first response. Kirti says, I face problems in critical reasoning. Jeremy says, I face time-related issues because I have an internship and studies on the side. Yeah, that's a big problem. Like, how do you manage time alongside your studies? And yeah, some people face challenges with certain sections like critical reasoning, reading comprehension, but they are not able to understand why they are actually weak in critical reasoning or that particular problem. Bhavanshu says consistency with daily studies alongside a job. Yes, that's another problem. Discipline, maintaining a discipline and studying regularly. I have Gayatri who says no proper strategy. I actually lack a strategy to prepare for the test. That's another pain point that is there with a good number of students, right? So let me see any other responses are there. Piyush says verbal is the problem. Niyati says scared whether we are covering all type of questions. Apart from that, getting consecutive questions wrong. True, that is another very interesting point Niyati has brought about. A lot of people do not really understand whether they are headed in the right direction. So again, thank you very much for all your responses. Let me tell you what are the problems, what are the pain points that we identified when we were actually interacting with these many students. So what we saw was the problem is multifold. Okay, and I can actually classify those problems in three broad categories. The first problem is students are left to plan their studies themselves, and they have to analyze their strengths and weaknesses to figure out why they are basically lacking and why are they not able to reach the target score. So for example, someone was mentioning that CR is their weakness. So it is up to them to analyze why CR is their weakness, and they have to take actions in order to overcome that weakness. They have to plan the studies themselves. Now, there's no problem in planning studies yourself, but the problem lies because you're not an expert at it. You are taking the GMAT probably for the first time, or you are very fresh at it. You do not have enough experience in planning the studies. And that is where a lot of people falter. That is where a lot of people are not able to manage studies with their office or with their education on the side. Okay. And this is why a lot of people even go to coaching institutes. But even in coaching institutes, no one actually gives you individual attention. So these were some of the few problems that we identified were there in the industry. Now, what we also saw was there are some solutions which are existing in the industry, those which try to solve these problems, but they're only doing so partially. Okay, for example, some people, like including coaching industries or basically even online courses, try to provide a 1 month or a 3 month study plan. But the biggest problem is that these plans are not personalized, and even those who claim that they personalize the plan do not adapt your plan as you progress. Okay, now what do I mean by this? What I mean to say is, let's say you're not able to study for some time or some weeks. Okay, let's say you have a project coming up in your office and you're not able to study for a week. Or let's say you had your exams coming up, midterm exams coming up, and you are not able to study. In that case, no one makes the relevant adjustments to your plan. You are asked to plan the things yourself, and that is a big issue. So no one is actually adapting the plan that you have. Now, when it comes to the other problem where you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses, some courses out there do share statistics related to your weakness. For example, one person here was telling that they know they are weak in CR. Okay, so some courses actually tell you that you are weak in CR, but what they do not tell you is why are you weak in CR. So the insights that are given are not actionable. Okay, so I'll delve deeper into what I mean by this. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to come to the main part of the webinar and I'm going to talk about this aspect as well. Okay, and the other solution to actually get individual attention is to take private tutoring. Okay, because even coaching institutes, if you see, focus only on the best students in the class. If there are 2 or 3 good students out of the 20 students who are there in a batch, they'll just focus on those 2-3 students. So students have to go for a private tutor, and all of us know that private tutors are not really affordable. They are very expensive and not everyone can afford it. Okay, so that's when we thought that these problems can be solved easily leveraging technology, and we can help students learn more efficiently using GMAT Viz. So that is how GMAT Viz started. It started with a mission to revolutionize the way students learn today, to make it more effective, to make it more efficient. And this webinar is one step in that direction. Okay, so let us enter the main part of the webinar without any further ado. Okay, so let me ask you another quick question. So now we are going to enter the main part where we are going to talk about whether how to get a 700 score in 40 days. Okay, so before I enter the main part, let me ask you this interesting question. Do you really believe it is possible to score 700 plus on GMAT in 40 days? Please answer to this poll over here. Do you really believe it is possible to get this score in 40 days? And please be honest with me. Like I don't want sugar-coated responses. Please tell me, what do you think? Is it possible? Is it not possible? Okay, I have got some interesting responses till now. All right. Surprisingly, no one has voted no yet. That is good. Happy to see that. Okay, there we go. So, as I said, no one has voted no yet. I got 1 vote for no. Interesting. Okay, I'll wait for some more time. I'll wait for some more responses till it gets stabilized. All right. So here are the results. A good 2/3 of the batch believes that it is possible, and I'm happy that you believe it. And probably you are here in the webinar because you believe in it. And trust me, it is possible to score 700 plus on GMAT in 40 days. And I'm going to tell you how you can actually do it. Okay, so it is definitely possible to do it. Now, those of you who believe it is not possible, probably you have gone through the preparation for GMAT for quite some time and haven't been able to improve your score. But do not worry. In this webinar, we are going to tell you what was lacking in your approach and how can you fix your approach to reach that score. Okay. And interestingly, 30% of you, which is like similar 1/3 of the batch that we have, says we cannot say. I understand that part, like, because as I was telling, a lot of people do not really understand how should they approach their prep and whether it is enough time or not. But trust me, 40 days is enough. Now it depends on what is your current skill level. So you need to, you may not need to put in a lot of effort, or you may need to put in a lot of effort depending on where you are. Okay, so I'll come to all that. So let us move to the main part of the webinar now. So this is the overview of how you can score 700 plus in 40 days. Okay, the first step in your approach should be to have a concrete plan of action. Okay, and I'm going to delve deeper into each one of these areas one by one, but I'm just going to run you through the overall plan. So the first step is to have a concrete plan. Then once you have a complete plan, you need to execute the plan with discipline. Okay, and mark my words, executing the plan with discipline is the most important thing. Okay, then you need to assess your performance across relevant data points. Okay, and finally, once you have assessed your performance across relevant data points, you need to optimize and identify what is still lacking in your approach, and then you need to basically do this cycle once again if required. Okay, so the idea is you have to plan things properly first, then you have to execute them, then you have to assess yourself at regular intervals, and then you have to optimize your plan. Okay, so this is how you are going to approach your GMAT preparation to score a 700 plus. Okay, so let's get started with the first step, that is planning. So the first step you should follow is to set the right target score. So you need to set the right target score. What I mean by the right target score? So basically it is twofold. One, you need to identify what is the right score that you need to enter the dream school of yours. Okay, and the second thing that you need to do then is you need to break down your target score into the target quant and verbal scores. Now, when you're breaking down your target score into your quant and verbal scores, there are two scenarios that are possible. One scenario is you are really good in one section out of quant and verbal, and you're weak in another. Okay, in that case, you should try to maximize your score in your strong section. Okay, now I'll talk more about this as well. Now the other scenario is you are equally good in both sections. You should then try to balance the target into quant and verbal. Okay, that should be your goal. So let us take an example to understand this. So let's assume your target score is 70. You belong to the first group of students who are good in one section. So let's assume that you are good in quant. Then what you should do? Then you should break down the target of 720 into a quant 50 and a V38. Okay, because quant is your strength, so you're trying to maximize your score to around 50. And in verbal, you're trying to have a decent enough score, which is 38. Now, some of you might ask me, why are you telling us to target a 50 and not a 51? Okay, obviously, if you are able to get a 51, there's nothing like that. But getting a perfect 51 is definitely not that easy. It depends on a lot of other factors, including your performance on the test day. So I would recommend that you should take a target of verbal score of 38 and a quant score of 50. So even if you end up getting a 51, you will end up getting more than 720 on the test day. That is for sure. Now, if you're good in verbal, your target should be broken down as quant 46 and verbal 43. Okay, it should be very easy for you to score a 46 in quant and 43 in verbal if you are good in verbal. Now, what about the case when you're equally good in both the areas? Now, if you're equally good in both the areas or equally poor in both the areas, your target score should be around Q48 and V40, and somewhere around this number. Okay, so this is the first stage in your planning. So firstly, you need to make sure that you are basically breaking down your target score into your sectional targets. Now, once you know what are your target scores, it is time to set clear weekly targets and deadlines. Now, this is very, very important, especially for those of you who were telling me that they're struggling to balance their studies or work life with GMAT prep. Okay, the best way and the easiest way to manage both the things together is to have very clear targets and deadlines. Okay, ideally, you would need anywhere between 100 to 350 hours to prepare depending on your current level. And I know this is a big range, right? 100 to 350, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you exactly how much time you're going to take to prepare for GMAT. Okay, so we are going to come to that for sure. But generally, a person will need anywhere between this much time to get a 700 score. And the deadlines and target should be kept in mind, keeping this preparation time. In fact, when you're creating your weekly targets, you should consider the following 4 factors. The first factor that you should consider is your strengths and weaknesses. Whether you are strong in some areas or weak in some areas, you have to take those into account while creating your targets. The second thing that you need to take care of is how much time is available with you for studies. So whether you have 2 hours on a day on an average, whether you have just 1 hour on a day on an average, or you have 5 hours on a day on an average. You have to take that into account as well. The third thing that you need to take into account is what is your pace of learning? How fast or how slow do you learn? Okay, that is one important factor that a lot of people do not really take into account. And the fourth factor that you need to consider is how much content you need to study. Okay, and this is probably, if I have to tell you, which is the biggest problem in all these 4 things, which where people lack, is the fourth one. They go about their prep randomly. They just go about solving questions, and solving questions. Whatever question they get their hands on, they try to solve it. So they do not focus on the right content to study. So if you focus on all these 4 areas while creating your targets and your deadlines, you will be able to actually set up a very strong plan for yourself. Okay. Now, I'm 100% sure that you must be wondering, how do I plan the deadlines using these many factors? Okay. There are so many factors to take care of. How do I plan my prep using these many factors? How do I create a detailed plan using these many factors? So please tell me if that is going in your mind. Are you thinking that? Please share that with me over here. I'm starting a poll, yes, no poll. Are you wondering, how do I plan the deadline using these many factors? How do I set the targets for everything, for SC, for CR, for quant, or maybe even further deep dive into SC, for example, verb tenses, when do I complete them? So are you wondering that? Please respond to this poll. Okay, I have some responses till now, and I would request everyone to respond to this one. Okay, so I'll wait for 10 more seconds. All right, so till now, I see that not almost, actually everyone is not sure how to create a plan, how to create a detailed plan with detailed targets and deadlines. Okay, and don't worry, we have a solution for you. We have a very detailed solution for you. What you can do is you can log into the GMAT Fizz website by clicking on the link in the chat option. I would request Shakib to share a link in the chat option with everyone so that everyone can actually check it out. So you can click on the link in the chat and go to the GMAT Fizz website. And if you don't want to do it right now, you can do it at the end of the webinar as well. We are going to share the link then. So when you go to the GMAT Fizz website, you can actually log into the free trial and create a free account. Once you create a free account for yourself, the tool will automatically ask you for these factors. It will automatically ask you for all these factors and create a detailed target plan for you. And this is how your plan is going to look like. So let me show you a glimpse of the plan. So if you see right now on your screen, the tool actually divides your preparation into various modules. Okay, so you start with the free trial. A free trial is because you are a free user, so you get to access some learning material from number properties, geometry, sentence correction, critical reasoning, and so on, just to check the kind of content that we offer. But after that, your real plan starts, where you start with sentence correction, then go to critical reasoning, reading comprehension, and so on. And mind it, this plan is personalized. I'm just showing it to you for a particular student. When you enter those 4 factors at the time of onboarding, the tool will actually change these things for you. It might serve you quant first, it might serve you critical reasoning first, for that matter. Okay, so it totally depends on what your needs are. So you don't need to worry about it at all. You don't need to think yourself. All you need to do is put the data and let the tool decide for you. Okay, and the best thing is this plan adapts. Okay, so right now if you see, it tells you that in current week what you need to do is these elements you have to follow in the current week. Then in sentence correction you have to complete sentence correction by 13th of December, and even in sentence correction it gives you very clear deadlines for the 3 units. Foundation should be done by 11th November, golden rule framework should be done by 27th November, and advanced should be done by 13th December. Now I'm sure some of you might be thinking that, okay, this is too long, right? This is showing a lot of time because the student who has entered this data is just preparing for 7 to 8 hours in a week, which is just 1 hour per day. Okay, but later on, if he wants to increase the time per week, he can actually do that from the system. He can actually go to the my profile section, and I'll just show you that. You can go to the my profile section. Over here you can see that he has entered a time as 5 to 10 hours. If he increases it to 26 to 30 hours per week, the plan will automatically adjust itself and it will change all the deadlines. So if you now see, sentence correction is getting done by 14th of November. So student now has a deadline. He knows that he has to complete sentence correction by 14th of November, in which he has to complete SC foundations by 6th of November, golden rules framework by 10th of November, and so on. So the whole planning is changed according to the user's requirements, and the user now is able to complete the actually complete the whole prep by 20th of December, which is the quant advanced section. If you see on the bottom, the quant advanced, let me actually take it one screen back and show you. So see, if you see on the bottom, the quant advanced section is getting done by 20th of December. Okay, so this is how the tool can help you to plan your prep end to end. You can actually get all the detailed deadlines from the tool, even if you are a free trial user. Okay, so now let me ask you another poll. Let me start the screen share once again, and let me go to a poll. In fact, let me start this poll again, and let me ask you, are you clear now? How can you get a clear targets and deadlines for yourself? Is that clear to you now? Please respond to this poll by saying yes or no. Good. I see some responses on my screen. Perfect. So, okay, everyone except one person has said that they are clear how to get clear deadlines and targets. So if you're not clear, all you need to do is go to gmatviz.com and sign up for the free trial. You'll get all the deadlines and targets personalized for you. Okay, so let me move ahead now. Let me move to the next part of the webinar. So once you have your clear targets and deadlines in front of you, what is the next step? The next step is you need to identify. Let me actually go to the next slide very quickly. You need to identify what is the right sequence of studying for you. Okay, and it depends on whether you have recently started your prep or you have been preparing for quite some time now. So if you remember, while I was showing you the video, I was telling you that the tool will automatically identify whether you need to do quant first or verbal first or CR first. Okay, this is what I mean by sequence of studying. So if you have started your prep recently, then you should basically take up one section at a time. You should ideally study quant or verbal first. Okay, if you are studying verbal first, for example, then you should start with sentence correction, then go to critical reasoning, and finally move to CR. And I'm only talking about people who have recently started preparing. I'm not talking about people who have been preparing for quite some time now. I'll talk about those people as well in case 2 later on. But if you have recently started preparing, in verbal, you should follow this sequence and you should only take up either quant or verbal first. And the reason is for this is very simple. If you take up multiple sections at the same time, especially when you're a working professional or you are a full-time student, it becomes difficult for you to manage both the sections, because then you will be dividing your day into two parts and learning both of them, and you're not doing justice to any of the sections. So I strongly recommend either doing verbal or quant first. Okay, and you should start with your strength. That is what we believe in. That gives you motivation and confidence to stay on the right track. So let's say you start with verbal, then you should do sentence correction, then critical reasoning, and then RC, because this is the progressive learning cycle. You're going to learn certain skills in SC, which you're going to use in CR, and then you're going to learn some skills in CR, which will eventually be used in reading comprehension. So this is the best method. This is the best sequence rather to follow for verbal. Now, what about quant? In quant, we believe that you should break your preparation into three parts. Okay, you should first start with the basic topics, then you should go on to the intermediate topics. Basically, intermediate topics are unit digits, linear inequalities, circles, etc. And then you should go ahead with the advanced topics. Okay, now this is the best way to actually learn, because generally what happens is students especially with quant, they study randomly. They study one topic in algebra, they study one topic in number properties, and or they just try to complete algebra first, but they do not understand that everything is in quant is interlinked. There are certain basic topics which will find their application in the intermediate topics, and then there are certain intermediate topics which will find their application in the advanced topics. Okay, and this is, trust me, not an easy thing to identify. A lot of people actually ask me, how should I go about like focusing on which sections I should do in quant first? And if you also don't understand this part, then you can actually use the free trial of GMAT Fizz to understand this part as well. And let me show you this video. So even if you're a free trial user and you do not have access to the logged modules, it allows you to see what is inside the module at least. Okay, so if you see in quant foundations, what you need to first do is you need to first go through these three topics: number classification, fraction decimals, and estimation and rounding. Then you should go through the algebra basics, which are linear equations and so on. Then you should go through word problem basics, which include unitary method, ratio proportion, and percentages. So similarly, the whole free trial module will help you figure out what are the basic things that you need to do and what is the sequence in which you need to do. So even if you're a free trial user, you're not a paid customer, you can actually see which are the learning elements and what is the sequence in which you should go through them. Okay, and this is what you need to do for quant. Okay, and even for SC or CR or RC, you can find all these things. So I'm skipping this part over here. So the idea is, once you know like what is the sequence in which you should prepare, you have done half of the job, because you have now identified clear targets for yourself. You now know what is the sequence in which you are going to prepare. You now know what should you do first, what you should do second and third, and so on. So everything is laid out for you very clearly. So what is left to do now is just to study. You only have to focus on studying. So your job is cut out to just study and not worry about anything else. Okay, so this is what I meant by identifying the sequence. Now let me talk about the other group of people who have already prepared for quite some time now. Okay, so let me talk about this set of people. So what should these people do? Now, what these people should do is they should take a module-wise test first, and they should identify what are their strong areas and what are their weak areas. Now, they can take a benchmark of 70% accuracy to identify what are their strong areas and weak areas. Okay, so less than 70% is weak area, and more than 70% is going to be a strong area. Okay, so simple, less than 70% your weak area and more than 70% is your strong area. That is how you can divide. So let's take an example to understand. Okay, let's take the example of SC, CR, and RC for that matter. So let's say this student has 90% accuracy in SC, 60% in CR, and 40% in RC. Then what is the right order that the student should follow? So what he needs to do is he needs to identify what are his weak areas. So over here we can clearly see that CR and RC are the weak areas. So he should do CR and RC first, and then he should do SC. Okay, and even in CR and RC he should not do RC first, because even though it is at 40% level, he should first do CR and then do RC followed by SC. So this is how his final sequence should look like. The first priority is CR, the second priority is RC, and the third priority is SC. So whatever time is left with the student, he should focus on SC at the end. Okay, so tell me, is this part clear to you as well? Please respond to this poll with a yes and no. Let me know if it is clear to you. All right, I'll wait for the responses. Okay, I have some responses till now. 7 people have responded, and I see that almost everyone is clear except one or two people. Okay, I have 10 responses. I'll wait for 5 more seconds. All right, so I see that 80% of you are clear with this. And those of you who are not clear, I'm just reiterating this. So if you have already prepared for quite some time, you need to break down your strong and weak areas. Basically break down the modules into your strong and weak areas, and take up your weak areas first, and finally you should take up your strong areas. And if you're not clear still, you don't have to worry about it. That is the problem that we are trying to solve with GMAT Viz. You can actually log on to the GMAT Viz platform, tell your data. GMAT Viz platform will automatically ask you all the information. You input everything in the platform, and the platform will automatically identify your sequence of studying and your targets and deadlines for you. Okay, so you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to think about all of it. You can simply go to the free trial and get it done. Okay, so this is what I meant by the planning stage. Remember, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So until you convert your goal to do an MBA with into a plan, it is just a wish. You just want to actually enter the top management cadre till now. If you convert it into a planned way and you stick to the plan by making sure that you're disciplined, you're taking care of the deadlines and hitting them regularly, you will be able to score 700 plus on the test. Okay, so this is the first stage. Planning gets half of your job done. The next stage is the execution stage. Okay, so in order to build the skill to score 700 plus, you will need two things. The first thing that you need is your strong conceptual understanding, and the second thing that you need is application driven approach. You need to understand how to apply the concepts on the GMAT. Okay, and what do I mean by application? Let me give you a very simple example. GMAT is never going to ask you what is a prime number or what is the definition of a prime number. GMAT is going to ask you to apply your understanding of prime numbers to solve questions. That is what I mean by application. Now, most people understand the importance of concepts and work very hard building the concepts. They in fact spend most of their time, 60 to 70% of their time, just building the concepts. But very few people understand what application is. Okay, they spend very few time on actually applying the concepts or learning how to apply the concepts on a question. And this is very, very important. Most of the people, right after learning the concepts, start solving questions. And they believe that the more questions that they solve, the better they are going to become. But that's rarely the case. Generally, you need to learn the application along with the concepts to make sure that you are able to get a good hold on the concepts. Okay, and let me tell you how this should be done. So this is a typical learning curve for a student. Students generally start learning concepts, and then, as I was telling you, they just go to practice questions. Okay, and they then start struggling. They are not able to break the 650 barrier. Sometimes they even struggle to break the 600 barrier, and they do not understand why are they not able to do so. The main problem with this whole approach is there is a huge gap between concepts and questions. At GMAT Viz, we believe that you can bridge this gap with the idea of concept boosters. Okay, so our approach is you should learn application after solving, like after learning concepts, and then you should go to practicing questions. And this is something very few people do. Now, how do we do that? We have built the whole course, the whole concept of GMAT Viz is on this 3 pillars. We have built the whole course on in through 3 parts. One is you go through video lessons for one topic. So for example, you are studying prime numbers. Okay, so we will give you some video lessons for prime numbers first. Then we will give you concept boosters on prime numbers. Concept boosters will specifically a different type of questions. Will give you only one question at a time. You are supposed to solve that question one at a time and then go through the solution in detail. The reason we are giving one question at a time is we want you to look at the solution when things are still fresh in your mind, so that you get the explanation right away. Okay, and this concept boosters comes with very detailed explanation to help you understand how. Okay, and even if you're not taking our course, you're going through any other course, just make sure that after you learn the concepts, you use the right approach. You focus on getting the right approach. You do not focus on timing. That is a big problem with a lot of students. They start focusing on timing and they do not really focus on the application. Okay, so you take up the application first, you understand the method, and then finally you go to the practice quizzes. So this is the right learning curve that you should follow, and you should not follow the first learning curve where you just learn concepts and then solve questions. Okay, so this is a typical learning time of a student. We generally take up diagnostics. So if you see, the whole prime numbers module is broken down into some video lessons. There are 3 video lessons that you learn. Then you have 2 concept boosters. Then finally you have a practice quiz. And if you are a good student, if you are, let's say, good in prime numbers, we have a diagnostic at the top. So once you take the diagnostic, let me actually take you to that screen. Once you take the diagnostic, at the end of the diagnostic quiz will automatically identify whether you need to do all the video lessons. So if you see, this student was good in some areas, and based on which the tool identified that the student does not need to go through the video lesson 1 and video lesson 2. So automatically these 2 things were removed from the student's course. This was suggested rather. When the student accepts this change, he says that I want to go ahead with this change and clicks on next activity. Automatically these 2 activities are removed from the student's course. So now if you see, the student only has 1 video lesson to go through. So this is the best part of the GMAT Viz platform. It doesn't just tell you what is the right learning curve, it also personalizes the learning curve according to your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so this is the way you should actually go about preparing. Now, what is the right method to solve questions? When I was talking about approach, this is what I mean. You need to have the right methodology. You need to follow the right methodology to solve questions. The first, and I'll take up each module at a time and I'll tell you what is the right method. So for SC, you should always follow a meaning-driven approach. For CR, you should always follow pre-thinking. For RC, you should always follow involved and evolved reading. For DS, you should focus on drawing inferences. And for PS, you should follow a 3-step process. This is what we generally teach all of our students, and these are the most effective tools, basically most effective methods that we have identified over the last decade. This is common among all successful students that we have interacted with. So our course is completely based on these 5 methods, and we are going to arrange free webinars for each of focusing on each of these approaches in the coming weeks, and we will be sharing the registration links with you as we organize them. So don't worry, we are going to have different sessions. They are we will take you through each of these methods in a very detailed manner. So till the time, you should focus on these methods when you are learning each of these areas. Okay, Now, once you're done with the execution stage, like you need to go to the assessment stage. Now, what happens in the assessment stage? So you need to assess your strengths and weaknesses in 2 stages. Okay. One is the learning phase. One is the fine-tuning phase. Okay. Now, what do I mean by the learning phase? Now, after you complete a particular topic, so let's say you complete a prime numbers, the topic of prime numbers, you need to take a small test. For example, we talked about the practice quiz. So you need to take a small test and identify what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Okay, if there is a weakness, then you need to focus on the weak parts right away, because generally at this stage of your learning, when you're just learning a topic, you will have some conceptual gaps. Now, if you do not identify these conceptual gaps, these issues will keep on piling up. These issues will keep on piling up. And later on, these issues are going to become so big that you won't even understand where you're lacking. So ideally, you should take a topic quiz right away once you are done with a topic and understand at least the conceptual gaps. Let me give you an example. In quant, people generally tend to confuse even or odd prime numbers. They do not understand what are even or what there is only one even prime number, that is 2. Sometimes they forget about it. Sometimes they do not understand what is middle term factor in quadratic, or many other examples I can take. So if you do not remember these basic things and you go on to advanced level things, then you will actually end up making mistakes in the advanced questions just because your basics are not clear. So you need to take up a topic quiz and right away identify your weaknesses before your issues pile up and become big. Okay. And the best part is, even our GMAT course is made in a way that it identifies the weaknesses right away for you. So if you take this practice quiz of prime numbers, for example, you complete this quiz. Once you are done with this quiz, automatically the system will identify what are your strengths and weaknesses. So for example, you see the system has already identified that the student is weak in these 3 areas. These are the 3 conceptual gaps that the student has. Now, the best part is we just don't just tell you these are the conceptual gaps. If you want, we add these things to your course. So all you have to do is add these recommendations to your course, and it automatically creates some new activities. So if you see these 3 videos were not there, these 3 videos are added, personalized for you only, because we have identified that these are 3 mistakes that you need to cover up before you move on to the hard things. Okay, tough sections. And this is something we do for quant. This is something that we do for verbal as well. So for example, if you are taking up let me go to the next slide actually. If you're taking up a verbal test, let's say in sentence correction, you have done one part of the sentence correction module, the quiz will identify if you are weak in any area. So for example, this student is weak in these 2 topics, group nouns and each of every before subject. So the system has identified that, and it adds those activities automatically to the student's course. Okay, so you can see that these activities are identified and automatically added to your course. That's the best part about the course, because you're not really letting the issues pile up. You're basically removing the issues, killing the issues at source. So this is the most effective way to learn. Okay, and trust me, a lot of people have come to me and said that I have done I've done my preparation from Manhattan, I've done my preparation from XYZ and so on, and I've spent so much time doing it, but I still don't know where I'm lacking. Okay, but if you focus on learning this way, this is a very scientific way of learning where you are actually killing this problem at its source. So you are making sure that all your errors are identified and rectified. So at the end, when you're completing your course, you will not have so many issues left with your prep. Okay, so this is the learning stage. So you need to assess a topic right away after you learn it, plug the gaps that exist, and in this way you need to complete a certain module. So for example, you completed a sentence correction module in this way. Now what you need to do next is, let me go to the next slide very quickly. Just give me a second. Then what you need to do is you need to assess yourself once again at the fine-tune stage. What is the fine-tune stage? So once you are done with the SC section, for example, SC module, for example, you take a module test. You take a SC specific test. Okay, you can take 1 or 2 quizzes there, consisting of 15 to 30 questions. Once you take this test, you need to identify your weak areas. Now, what are your weak areas? Weak areas are those areas which have less than 60% accuracy. Okay, so if you have less than 60% accuracy in any area, for example, in SC you identified that you have less than 60% accuracy in modifiers, then you need to work on optimizing or improving your understanding of modifiers. Now, how do you optimize it? Let me show you that. So in order to optimize, the first thing you need to do is revise the concepts once again. So you go back to the modifiers part, you revise the concepts, you revise the video lessons for the modifiers, solve and review questions, then take up 10 questions, okay, just 10 questions, and take them one by one. Do not solve them all at once. This is a big mistake that students do. They identify they are weak in CR, so they just take the OG and solve all OG questions of CR at a stretch. That is something you should not do. You should take up 10 questions or 15 questions, solve them one by one. After solving each question, review the solution and focus and spend time on reviewing the solution. That is something which is more important. Okay, if you are taking 2 minutes or 3 minutes to solve a question, you should spend 5 to 7 minutes to review the solution. Identify where you are going wrong. Look at the solution and note down the deviation from the approach that happened. Okay, so let me give you an example. So let's say in critical reasoning that you are weak with assumption related questions. Now, when you're going through the solution, you need to see, in the first stage, you need to see whether you are able to understand the premise and the conclusion clearly, whether you are able to understand the scope of it clearly. If there was a deviation, take a note of it in your notebook. Okay, make sure that the next time when you're solving a question, you're focusing on the scope. Even if it requires you to spend more time on the question, do it. Because unless you have the skill to solve a question, even if you are taking less time to solve it, you are not going to end up with a good score because your accuracy is going to be low. So your focus should be on accuracy. So you first understand the scope of the premise and the conclusion. Then you see whether you are able to pre-think in the right way, whether the pre-thought assumptions which were written in the explanation were the same as the ones that you thought. If were not the same, ask yourself, why were you not able to do it? Take some learning from it, okay? And then apply those learnings in the next questions that you solve. Okay, so this is what I mean by focus on learning the application. So do not worry about your accuracy at that moment. You should focus on the method. So remember, quality is always more important than quantity. Okay, a student can just solve 600 to 700 questions and do well on the GMAT, whereas another student can struggle even after solving 3000 odd questions. He can still not get a good score on the GMAT. Okay, so this is what you need to improve your weak areas. Now let me ask another question. Is this part clear to all of you? Let me ask you in this poll. Please select yes or no if this part is clear. Okay, good. I see some responses. I'll wait for 10 seconds for the responses to come. All right, so I see that everyone is clear with the discussion. So happy to hear that. So this is how you improve your weak areas. Now, what next? Once you have improved your weak areas, then you need to start taking up sectional tests. So you can take up sectional tests. What I mean by sectional test is you can take up a sectional test in quant and a sectional test in verbal, where you take up around 30-35 questions and solve them in 60-70 minutes. You to actually get test, okay, slowly. And once you're done with that, you test. So generally 4 to 5 mock tests are good enough to understand which order in which you should take the test. Okay, remember, a lot of people come and tell me that I actually I want to take 10 mocks or 15 mocks. Where should I get these mocks from? Or some people even come to me and say that I have taken this stack at 600. So this is a big problem with many students, that they feel that just taking mocks will help them improve their score. That doesn't happen. Your focus should be on sectional tests more. See, if you are able to take sectional tests well and you identify your weaknesses here, you can actually kill them over here itself. The idea is when you take the mocks, you are ready to take the GMAT. You're just taking the mock to get used to a 3-hour long test, to basically get used to the order in which you should take the test. Okay, if you're thinking that mock, you will use mocks to identify your weaknesses, then your planning is wrong. Okay, your weaknesses should be killed at source. It should be killed at the learning phase. It should be killed at the fine-tuning phase and not at the okay. So this is how you should go about your prep. So these are the 4 stages of your preparation: planning, executing, assessing, and optimizing. So you can actually go to the free trial version of GMAT Viz and basically use all these things to get your detailed plan to actually start studying. And this is where like we have completed the second section of the we are opening the seminar now to the Q&A section. You can actually post any queries that you have in this chat pod, and we will be happy to answer them for you. Okay. And if you register for the free trial of GMAT Viz, I'm sharing the link over here with you. You can just use this link to start learning.